Good morning, class. Today we are on lesson 2.4 in your GoMath book. Today's lesson is going to be on using bar graphs. Your essential question is, how can you read and interpret data in a bar graph? Okay, let's look at our vocabulary words. Remember, your vocabulary words are highlighted in yellow, and you should have torn out your vocabulary cards at the beginning of this chapter. A bar graph uses bars to show data. A scale of equally placed numbers helps you read the number each bar shows. The students in the reading group made a bar graph to record the number of books they read in October. How many books did Seth read? Okay, so before we even attempt to answer our question, we need to look at our bar graph, and we need to make sure that we understand all of the information here. So we have the title up here. The title tells what the bar graph is about. Okay. Each bar is labeled with a student's name. So over here we have the label for what this is over here. Student is the title for this side, the label. Then we have Max, Amy, Seth, and Katie. On the bottom, we have number of books. That's your label for the bottom. And then you can see that it's numbered 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. Now, the way that a bar graph is numbered is called the scale, okay? So the scale for this bar graph is from 0 to 16. So when you're asked the scale, you say where it starts, where it ends, and then you also say what it's counting by. So the scale on this bar graph is from 0 to 16 by twos, because look, it's counting by twos. Okay? The length of a bar tells how many books each student read. All right. So before we even answer the questions, I'm going to show you a trick I have with bar graphs. This is going to make answering questions about bar graphs way easier, and it's going to make it much more difficult to make silly mistakes. So the first thing I like to do is go through and write the number amount at the end of each bar. So let's look at Max. Max's purple bar stops right here, which if I follow it down, that's at 6. So that means Max read 6 books. Now I'm going to go to Amy. Amy has the blue bar, and it comes to here. But Amy's bar ends in between two numbers on my scale. So what does that mean? It's right in the middle of 8 and 10. Our scale is counting by twos. So what number is right in the middle of 8 and 10? 9. So Amy read 9 books in October. Seth is our green bar, and Seth goes all the way to here, and I follow it down, and it's 8. So Seth read 8 books. And then lastly, we have Katie. Her red bar goes all the way to here. Katie read 12 books. Okay. Find the bar for Seth. It ends at 8. So Seth read 8 books in October. Let's answer some more questions about this bar graph. How many books did Max read? 6. 6 what? 6 books. Who read 4 fewer books than Kate? Remember, fewer means less. So Kate read 12 books, right? And what's 12 minus 4? Fewer says subtract. 12 minus 4 equals 8. Good. So now you just need to go find out who read 8. Well, I know Seth read 8 books, so that means Seth read 4 fewer books than Kate. What if Amy read 5 more books? All right, more tells me I'm adding. How many books did Amy read? Shade the graph to show how many she read. So right now, Amy read 9. So what's 9 plus 5? To show 5 more, that's 14. So what if Amy read 14 more books? Then she read 14 books total. But they also want us to shade that graph. So I'm going to go up to Amy, and I need to take her all the way down to 14, do the top line, I do the bottom line, and then I connect them, and then shade it in. Okay? All right, flip over your page. You should be on page 108 right now. Okay, these are more examples of bar graphs. Now I want you to look at these two bar graphs and decide what is different. Hopefully you noticed that the bars on this are going from left to right, and the bars on this graph are going up and down from top to bottom. Okay, these are two different types of bar graphs. First, this is a horizontal bar graph. In a horizontal bar graph, the bars go across from left to right. The length of the bar shows the number. So a horizontal bar graph, horizontal goes across from left to right. In a vertical bar graph, the bars go from top to bottom. So the height of the bars show the number. So vertical is up and down, horizontal is across. Okay? All right, let's go ahead and look at these two graphs. They're both titled Favorite Winter Activity. On the horizontal bar graph, we have activity on the side. We have ice skating, skiing, sledding, and hockey. On the bottom, we have number of students. Now look at this and tell me, what is the scale for this bar graph? I'm going to give you a moment to think about it. The scale for this bar graph is from 0 to 28 by 4s. They're counting by 4s. All right, so now let's go ahead and label all these bars. Ice skating is 20 students. Skiing is halfway between 12 and 16. So in between 12 and 16, you have 12, 13, 14, 15, then 16. So which number is in the middle? 14. Good. Sledding stops on 24. And hockey stops in between 16 and 20. So what is in the middle of 16 and 20? So you're counting by 4s. What's half of 4? 2. 16 plus 2 is 18. Okay, now let's read this graph. We have the number of students on this side. Your scale is still 0 to 28 by 4s. Your activities are on the bottom: ice skating, skiing, sledding, and hockey. And let's label them. Ice skating, the bar stops at 20. Skiing, we're halfway between 12 and 16, and we know half of 4 is 2, so we add 2 on, it's 14. Sledding lands on 24. Hockey is halfway between 16 and 20. Half of 4 is 2, add 2 onto 16, you have 18. Okay, now we are ready. We have read our bar graphs, we're ready to look at these questions. What does each space between two numbers represent? Well, remember when we talked about our scale, we said it's going from 0 to 28 and it's counting by 4. For what? Students. So each space represents 4 students. Why do you think the scale in the graphs is 0 to 28 by 4s instead of 0 to 28 by 1s? Well, let's think about it. If this was 0 to 28 by 1s, this graph would be so much longer. So we skip count on our scales to help save space, okay? So the reason why is there would be too many numbers. and it would be too large or long if you're on the horizontal, and too tall if you're on vertical, so it would be too large. Okay, let's look at the share and show on the bottom of the page. Let's look at our bar graph first. We have the title of our bar graph, which is favorite way to exercise. This side is labeled with activity, and we have biking, walking, soccer, and karate. Now, hopefully you notice this is a horizontal bar graph because the bars are going from left to right. On the bottom, we have number of students, and what is your scale? Hopefully you recognize that the scale is from 0 to 16, counting by 2s. Okay, good. Now let's go ahead and find the total for each activity. Biking is the purple bar. It ends halfway between 6 and 8. What is halfway between 6 and 8? 7. Walking is your blue bar, and it ends right on 6. Soccer is your green bar, and it ends right on 14. And karate is your red bar, and it ends right on 10. Okay. Which activity did the most students choose? So I want you to think, which bar is the longest? So the longest bar is soccer, the green bar. So soccer is the activity that most students chose. Now look at number 2. Go ahead and read it. I want you to think about what you're reading. You're going to have questions like number 2 a lot when you're looking at different types of graphs. Look at number 2. It says, how many students answered the survey? Well, that means you need to go in and add up all your total votes to know how many students voted. So that means we are going to add up 7, 6, 14, and 10, because those are all of the votes that we have. Okay? So I know 7 and 6 is 13, plus 4 is 17. And 1 plus 1 is 2, plus 1 is 3, so 37. How many students answered the survey? 37 students. Which activity received 7 fewer votes than soccer? Remember, fewer is a clue word for subtraction. So how many votes did soccer have? 14. And we want the one that had 7 fewer. So what's 14 minus 7? 7. So now let's find the one that has 7. Biking. Biking has 7 fewer votes than soccer. See how much easier it is to answer the questions when you've already went through your bars and found their amounts? All right, great. Now I want you to grab page 109. Let's look at this bar graph. The title of this bar graph is Favorite Kind of Book. The label on this axis is number of students, and your scale is 0 to 40, and what are you counting by? 5. So 0 to 40 by 5. Good. On this axis, we have kind of book, and we have space, animals, nature, puzzles, and sports. The bars on this graph are going from top to bottom, which means this is a vertical bar graph. Let's go through and find the totals for all of our bars. Space stops at 15, so 15 students read space. Animals stops at 30. Nature stops at 10. Puzzles stops at 20. And sports stops at 35. All of them are directly on lines, so we don't have to figure out any amounts. Which kind of book was chosen by half the number of students as books about animals? Okay, so books about animals is 30. We have to figure out what is half of 30. So look at your bars. Which bar do you think looks like it's about half of 30? Well, 30 has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 bars inside of its bar. Do you see that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So what would be half of those 6? 3. So do you see a bar that covered 3 spaces? 1, 2, 3. So I am assuming that space, which is 15 students, is half of 30. Now, if 15 is half of 30, I should be able to do 15 plus 15, and it should equal 30. I'm a good mathematician, so I check my work. 15 plus 15 does equal 30, so that means that 15 is half of 30. So, which kind of book was chosen by half the number of students as books about animals? Space. Number 5. Which two kinds of books combined, what does combined mean? Combined means you're going to add, were chosen as often as books about sports. Okay, so sports is 35. So we need to find 2 books that when added together equal 35. All right, well, 15 plus 30 would be 45, so it's not that. 10 plus 20 would be 30, so it's not that. Let's try some other combinations. 15 plus 10 would be 25, so it's not that. 30 plus 10 would be 40. 15 plus 20 would be 35. So if I added together space plus puzzles, I would equal the same amount as sports. But I want to show my work because I'm a good mathematician. So sports are 15 plus puzzles 20 will equal 35. Okay? So I can say that my answer is puzzles and space. All right, now I'm going to skip down to number 7. What if 10 more means you're adding on to something. What if 10 more students were asked if they chose books about animals? Describe what the bar graph would look like. So let's go over to animals and let's add on 10. 5, 10, 5, 10. And shade it in. So the bar graph would look different because now your animals bar is going to go all the way to the top, and instead of sports being the having the largest amount of votes, now animals has the largest amount of votes. So it changes the bar graph significantly. Okay. Now you're going to have to look at your bar graph while we answer these questions. Here we go. More students chose books about sports than any other kind of book. Now, we're going off of the original bar graph, not what we just added on. So you want to look at the original bars, the purple, the blue, the orange, the green, and the red. So did more students choose sports than any other book? Yes, the red bar was the tallest, so that would be true. 5 more, means add, 5 more students chose books about puzzles than books about space. Okay. So space was 15, puzzles was 20, Is 25 more than 15? Yes, so that is true. 30 more, adding on, 30 more students chose books about animals than books about nature. Okay, so 30 students chose animals, 20 chose nature. 30 minus 20 is 10, not 30, so this one is false. 15 fewer, fewer means less, and subtraction. 15 fewer students chose books about puzzles than books about sports. Okay, so how many students chose books about puzzles? 20. And how many students chose books about sports? 35. It says 15 fewer. So let's see. 35 minus 20 equals 15. So are puzzles 15 fewer? Yes. All right. Now I want you to flip your paper over. I'm going to have to zoom out so you can see all of these at the same time. And this is page 110. Okay? So on this page, what we're going to do is we're going to figure out which of these bar graphs correctly shows the data from this frequency table. All right, so 4 students, Alicia, Spencer, Tyler, and Kate, graphed the data from this frequency table, but only one of them did it correctly. So let's check. First thing, title. Favorite amusement ride. They all have the right title. Done. Categories. You have ride and you have super slide, Ferris wheel, bumper cars, roller coaster. Okay, those are all correct. Next, we have the number of students. Are they all labeled? Number of students, number of students, number of students, number of students. You'll notice that they didn't all use the same scale. Spencer, Kate, and Tyler all used a scale of 0 to 24 by 2. But Alicia chose to use a scale of 0 to 36 by 3. So it will be interesting to see who did this correctly. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go through and find the totals for each ride on each graph. Okay? Now, our frequency table says super slide should have 11. Here we go. On Alicia's table, super slide stops halfway between 15 and 8. That is way more than 11. So I automatically know Alicia's table is not correct. So I can cross her table off. Spencer's table, his super slide, goes all the way between 22 and 24, which means it's 23. That is also not correct. Tyler, his super slide is halfway between 10 and 12, so his is on 11. Could be correct. Kate, her super slide is halfway between 10 and 12 as well, so she's on 11, so she could be correct as well. So now let's go to the next ride. Ferris wheel should be at 14. Tyler has Ferris wheel stopping at 18. That's not correct. Now, should I go ahead and assume that Katie's is correct? Absolutely not. We need to finish checking these last 3 rides. Ferris wheel should be at 14, and it is. Bumper cars should be at 18, and that is. And the roller coaster should be at 23. Halfway between 22 and 24, that's 23. So Katie completed her bar graph correctly. Not Katie, Kate. Okay, the other people made mistakes with where they landed their bars. Okay,